Hi guys. Today we're going to talk about another riveting technique. Last video I illustrated standard riveting, 3 different formats of doing so. This is going to focus on one very specific format called hidden rivet technique. Let me start out the video by thanking Duke Steingrim, Jeffrey Williams, who taught me this technique for use in armor. It's a method of both, like if you have 2 plates that slide on each other and say an articulated knee or something, you would use hidden riveting so that the head of the rivet would not stick up and interfere with the sliding of the plate. It's pretty important for that, but in jewelry making, it's really important if you are attempting to connect 2 pieces of metal without using soldering. I like soldering quite a bit, but without using soldering and without having the rivet hole being obvious. I was trying to do a drawing for you, and my drawing skills are not essentially up to snuff, so I'm just going to show you what I mean. For sake of illustration, I've got 2 little pieces of nickel with a hole drilled in them. That's the size of the rivet. Yep, so here you see plate, little nickel plate with a rivet through it. Here's the rivet. Now and the cool thing is I'm going to use nickel and a copper rivet, and the coloration difference is going to show you how the technique works. Some people call this countersink rivet technique, and that's a perfectly valid thing. Especially because I use a deburring and countersink tool. When you make a drill hole through the metal, it has a straight side profile, right? What you want to do is take your deburring tool, take your piece, and that's not bad. And you countersink. You stick your deburring tool in there and you carefully work it back and forth. And what that does is it makes a shouldered countersink. I am sort of talking down. What it also has the effect of doing is the hole on one side becomes bigger than the hole on the other. That's important, very important. And I'm going to do that to both pieces of metal because I really want the countersink to disappear. It's not necessary. It's only necessary to countersink the side that's pointing towards your audience. But you know, I'm just showing off now, illustrating a technique. So I spin it around, and I've done the same thing here. This hole is the size of the rivet shank. This hole is maybe not quite twice as big. And it's because it's now shouldered. The holes do not line up. That's great. It doesn't really matter. This is just for illustration purposes. So I'm going to put the rivet through. And now I have 2 plates, and I'm holding the rivet in place. I have a very small, highly polished square steel anvil. It's 3/4 of an inch thick, 4 inches by 4 inches, available on Rio Grande for, I'm gonna guarantee it's under $50, but my brain is telling me that I spent like $16 on this. It's a big slab of steel. It doesn't move much for, tapping lightly. I've got my nippers. You always cut your, you cut your rivet shank off, leaving just enough material to make a good dome. Now, because you're doing hidden rivet technique and you're going to sand this, you might leave a little bit of extra. Not much. Really, really not much, and this is gonna snip and fly, and it's gonna be fun. Oh, maybe not flying. Hooray! All right, so tilt the camera so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. Oh, that's awesome. And if I tilt the camera too far, it overbalances and falls down. Fantastic. I'm going to push pause for a second. And I'm back. All right. This is my favorite trusty lightweight. It's a chasing and repoussé hammer, but I use them for all purposes. It's got a moderately domed end and a ridiculously domed end. And I'm going to do a thing, and I always do this. It's called upsetting. It's where you strike the rivet once, really kind of, not hard, firmly though, and it squashes the shank and makes the shank get wider and fill the hole better. And this is going to be, I cut these plates maybe a little too small because my fingers are going to be in the way. But, okay, that's the upsetting. And now I'm going to just peen the head, right? And the purpose of this is to get the metal of the rivet filling the countersink. All right, that's pretty good rivet. You can see the head on one side. I'm going to move the camera closer again. All right, you can see the head of the rivet. If it's focusing. There's the head of the rivet. There's the peened part, and the peened part is sticking up slightly in a little dome because that's how I peened it. I'm going to push pause here in a second, and I'm going to go and sand this up and illustrate then what I really mean by hidden rivet technique. Good, I hope you can't hear that. That's my grinder slowing to a halt. I'm back from the sanding machine, and where'd the rivet go? Hidden rivet technique strikes again. So what I did was I sanded the head off of the rivet and I sanded the peening, and then I polished it just a little bit. I'm gonna tilt the camera just a touch now since I'm not using the anvil anymore. And it wouldn't be bad if you could see my face. I'm not that unattractive, but there's the rivet. You can just barely see that tiny circle right there. And the other side is, because I'm a perfectionist, I do both sides. You don't have to, as I previously explained, but you kind of can't see them. It's a good join. And what's happened is there's each side of the countersinking is bigger than the small hole where the rivet goes through. So as you mash the metal into that hole, it makes the cinch for you. It holds the pieces of metal together. And the excess metal that you've left behind, you sand away until it's flush with the surface of the piece, right? So you cannot see there's a rivet there at all, but it's holding it together pretty darn securely for being copper and nickel. It's a pretty secure rivet. I can see it pretty well because it's copper and brass, and my eyes are working really well today. You can sort of see it there. I have a red Sharpie. I love red Sharpies. And I'm gonna color just the head of the rivet to let you see what's going on. What happens is it just disappears. That's where the rivet is. And it's not really there. It is really there. It just doesn't look it. That's hidden rivet technique. And I love using it. I love the look. If it were a nickel rivet through nickel material or any matching material, brass rivet through brass, nickel through nickel, copper through copper, steel through steel. When you do the technique, if you sand it right, you can't see a thing. It vanishes. It absolutely vanishes. Or if you're not very careful, you can end up with a tiny little visible ring. And I don't even think that's that bad. but that's hidden rivet technique. It's very simple. It sounds like voodoo, sounds magical, but it's not. It's just one way of doing rivets, and it's a beautiful way of doing rivets. It's a way to make them vanish so that they don't appear in your final piece, and they look great. So thank you very much for paying attention, for watching. I hope this helps you. I hope you get to use this technique, and once you become comfortable with it, use it all the time. If you have any questions, reach out, messenger or comments or whatever, and I will try to address your questions. Thanks.